On the 10th of Muharram, in the year 61 after Hijrah, something happened that had never happened before and will never happen again. When Hussain ibn Ali was killed, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, the man who the Messenger of Allah carried on his shoulders and called Sayyid Shabab al-Jannah, the master of the youth of paradise, when his blessed head was severed from his body on the scorching sands of Karbala, the angels wept, not metaphorically. The heavens themselves mourned. Across the Islamic world, from the deserts of Arabia to the mountains of Persia, from the streets of Damascus to the valleys of Yemen, witnesses reported the same phenomenon. The sky turned red, as if the heavens were bleeding. Dust collected in homes was found crimson. Water drawn from wells came out the color of blood. Stones, when lifted from the ground, revealed fresh blood beneath them. Documented in Tarikh al-Tabari, Ibn Kathir's al-Bidayah wan-Nihaya, and numerous classical sources, the earth trembled. Animals refused to eat, and according to some narrations, even Iblis, Satan himself, wept, not from grief, but from envy, because he realized that while he was cursed for refusing to prostrate to Adam, these people had murdered the family of the final prophet, and their punishment would be far, far worse. But what truly happened on that day, that made the heavens themselves revolt? What series of events led to the grandson of the prophet being slaughtered in the desert? And why do we still speak his name 400 years later? That's what you're about to discover. In this story, you will uncover 5 truths about Karbala that most people have never heard. The Great Betrayal, how 18,000 people from the city of Kufa sent letters begging Hussein to come and lead them, and then abandoned him to face an army of 30,000 alone. The Siege of Thirst, how Hussein's camp, including women, children and infants, were cut off from the Euphrates River for 3 days in the burning desert heat. How a 6-month-old baby was struck by an arrow while his father begged for just a drop of water. The 72 martyrs, who they were, why they stayed, and what they said in their final moments that echo through eternity. The cosmic signs, the documented supernatural events that occurred the moment Hussein fell, events so profound that even non-Muslims recorded them. The eternal legacy, why Karbala didn't end with death, why it became the symbol of resistance against tyranny, and why tyrants still fear the name of Hussein. Dasan. This is not legend, this is not myth, this is history, authenticated, preserved, and carved into the conscience of humanity. To understand what happened at Karbala, you must first understand the world that led to it. After the death of the Prophet Muhammad, the Muslim Ummah was guided by the rightly guided caliphs, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali radiallahu anhum ajma'in, men chosen for their piety, justice and devotion to Allah. But after the assassination of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh in 661 CE, the caliphate transformed into something else, a monarchy. Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan radiallahu anh, a companion of the Prophet, a skilled politician, a powerful leader, rose to power. And though Muawiyah was respected by many, he made one decision that would fracture the soul of the Ummah. He declared that his son, Yazid, would succeed him, not through consultation, not through the people's choice, through inheritance. The caliphate, meant to be a trust from Allah, became a throne passed from father to son. And Yazid was not his father. Yazid ibn Muawiyah was known across the Muslim world for 3 things: wine, women, wickedness. He held lavish parties where Islamic law was mocked openly. He kept monkeys as pets, dressing them in silk and gold. He surrounded himself with poets who ridiculed the Quran. And when his father Muawiyah died in the year 680 CE, Yazid ascended to power. and immediately he demanded that every Muslim leader across the empire pledge allegiance, bay'ah, to him. Most complied, out of fear, out of political survival, out of convenience. But two men refused. One was Abdullah ibn al-Zubayr radiallahu anh, a companion's son who would later lead a rebellion in Makkah. The other was Hussain ibn Ali, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, the son of Ali and Fatima radiallahu anhuma, the living connection to the Messenger of Allah. Hussein did not refuse out of arrogance. He did not refuse because he wanted power for himself. He refused because he understood something the rest of the world had forgotten. Leadership in Islam is not about lineage. It's about character. And Yazid, drunk, corrupt, tyrannical, represented everything the Prophet had fought against. Hussein said, "A man like me does not pledge allegiance to a man like him, Maqtal al-Hussein." And with those words, his fate was sealed. It was late at night in Medina, the city of the Prophet. The streets were quiet. The sky was clear. Hussein radiallahu anhu gathered his family in his home. His wife, Rubab, holding their infant son, Ali al-Asghar. His sister, Zainab, the lioness who would carry his message to the world. His sons, Ali al-Akbar, barely 18, with a face so much like the Prophet that the companions would weep when they saw him. His half-brother, Abbas, tall, strong, loyal beyond measure. His companions, men who had known him for years, who loved him not for politics, but for who he was. And Hussein looked at them all and said something they would never forget. "They will not leave me alone until they kill me." Tarikh, al-Tabari. Zainab grabbed his hand, tears streaming down her face. "Then don't go, Ya Hussein. Stay here, stay in Medina, stay where our grandfather is, buried." But Hussein shook his head slowly. "If I stay, they will kill me here, and I will not let them desecrate the city of the Prophet with my blood." He knew what awaited him. This wasn't a political miscalculation. This wasn't naivety. This was martyrdom by choice. Because Hussein understood something most people never do. Some battles aren't fought to win. They're fought to teach. Before leaving, Hussein went to the grave of his grandfather, the one Prophet Muhammad. He stood there alone in the darkness, weeping, whispering prayers only Allah could hear. And then he turned to his companions and said, "Whoever wishes to leave, let him leave now. I release you all from your pledge, because where we are going, there is only death." Maqtal al-Hussein by Abu Miknaf. Not a single person moved. One by one they stepped forward. They said, "Ya Ibn Rasulillah, we will not abandon you. We came to live with you or die with you." And they meant every word. 72 men, women, children, they packed their belongings, said goodbye to Medina, the city of light, and began their journey toward Iraq, toward the letters, toward the promises, toward Karbala. The people of Kufa, a city in southern Iraq, had sent Hussein 18,000 letters. 18,000, each one begging him to come, each one promising loyalty, each one swearing, "We have no leader, come to us, we will fight for you, we will die for you." So, Hussein, trusting their word, believing in their faith, set out with his family across the desert. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that the same people who invited him had already been bought. Yazid's governor had threatened them, bribed them, turned them, and by the time Hussein's caravan reached the borders of Iraq, an army was waiting, not to welcome him, to kill him. 30,000 soldiers, blocking the road, blocking the water, blocking any escape. But as Hussein left Medina with his family, who could have imagined that the desert was already waiting with thousands of soldiers? That the letters were lies? That the people who swore to protect him would be the ones to watch him die? voice becomes a whisper. What happens next will break your heart, and it will never leave you. The caravan moved through the desert like a funeral procession. 72 men, women wrapped in travel cloaks, shielding their faces. From the relentless sun, children walking beside camels, their small feet blistering on the hot sand, and at the front, Hussain ibn Ali, silent, resolute, knowing. The journey from Medina to Iraq should have taken weeks. But with every passing day, the news grew darker. Messengers would arrive, dusty, exhausted, terrified, with reports that made the companions' faces pale. The governor of Kufa has threatened anyone who supports you. Your cousin, Muslim ibn Aqil, has been killed. The people have turned back. The letters were lies. And still Hussein pressed forward, not out of stubbornness, not out of blindness, out of certainty, because he had seen this in a dream. The Prophet Muhammad had come to him and said, "You are coming to us soon," narrated in Tarikh al-Tabari. Hussein knew this was a one-way journey. He was not marching toward victory. He was marching toward eternity. The heat was unbearable. The sun hung in the sky. Like a furnace, unrelenting, the children began to complain of thirst. The elderly struggled to keep pace. And in the distance, on the horizon, dust, rising, moving, an army, not coming to greet them, coming to trap them. One of Hussein's companions, Zuhair ibn al-Qayn, rode up beside him and said, "Ya ibn Rasulillah, we should turn back. This is an ambush." But Hussein looked at him and said, "There is no turning back, not from this, not from destiny." Maqtal al-Hussein. And so they continued, deeper into the desert, closer to the trap, closer to Karbala. On the 7th of Muharram, Hussein's caravan reached the plains of Karbala, a barren stretch of land, no trees, no shade, just sand, heat, and silence. And nearby, so close they could hear it, the Euphrates River, the lifeline of the desert, cool, flowing, forbidden. Umar ibn Sa'd, the commander of Yazid's army, had given the order, "Surround the river. Do not let them reach the water." 4,000 cavalrymen formed a wall between Hussein's camp and the Euphrates, swords drawn, spears ready. No mercy, not for the men, not for the women, not even for the children. The first day without water was difficult. The second day was agony. By the third day, the camp was dying. The children stopped playing. They sat in the tents, too weak to cry, their lips cracked and bleeding. The women tried to comfort them, but their own throats were too dry to speak. And the men, warriors who had faced battle without flinching, began to tremble, not from fear of death, but from watching their families suffer. Hussein's brother Abbas, the strongest among them, the one they called Qamar Bani Hashim, the moon of the Hashemites, stood at the edge of the camp staring at the river. He could see it, he could hear it, but he could not reach it, and beside him a child tugged at his cloak and whispered, "Uncle Abbas, I'm so thirsty." Abbas knelt down, pulled the child close, and wept, because there was nothing he could do. One who was there later said, "I watched a mother carry her infant to the edge of the camp. The baby was barely conscious. His lips were white, his body limp. She walked toward the soldiers, these men with swords and armor, and she fell to her knees. She held up her baby and said, 'Please, he has done nothing. He hasn't sinned. He hasn't rebelled. He is just a child. Give him water, just a few drops, please.' The soldiers looked at her. Some turned away, some stared at the ground, but no one moved. One of them finally said, 'We have orders, no water, not for anyone.' The mother screamed. She begged. She wept. And then she walked back to the tent, carrying her dying child. Accounts preserved in Maqtal al-Hussein and transmitted through generations. The children cried until their voices cracked, but no mercy came. This was not war. This was cruelty. This was not strategy. This was torture. And the men who carried out these orders claimed to be Muslims. They prayed. They fasted. They said, La ilaha illallah. But they blocked water from the family of the Prophet, and they will answer for it on a day when no excuse will be accepted. On the night of the 9th of Muharram, Hussein gathered his companions, the men who had refused to leave, the men who had chosen to die beside him, and he said, No, I give you permission to leave, all of you. Go now under the cover of darkness, take my cloak and use it to escape. They only want me. Tarikh al-Tabari. No one moved. His brother Abbas said, And leave you? Never. We did not come here to abandon you. Ali al-Akbar, his 18-year-old son, said, Father, if I die defending you, I will die in paradise. Why would I run? Zuhair ibn al-Qayn said, By Allah, I would rather be killed and brought back to life and killed again 1,000 times than leave your side. Maqtal al-Hussein. And then Hussein stood and spoke words that would echo through history. He said, People like us do not pledge allegiance to people like them. If you must kill us, then kill us, but know this, death with dignity is better than a life of humiliation. Preserved in classical Islamic sources, death with dignity, better than life with humiliation. Not survival at any cost, not compromise for comfort. Dignity, truth, principle, even if it means standing alone, even if it means death. Because Hussein understood something the world had forgotten. Your soul is worth more than your safety. The night of the 9th of Muharram was the longest night of their lives. Hussein prayed through the darkness. He recited Quran. He wept. He asked Allah for one thing. Give me one more night to worship you. Maqtal al-Hussein. Because he knew tomorrow was the end. Tomorrow, the swords would come. Tomorrow, the blood would flow. Tomorrow was Ashura. The women sat in the tents, unable to sleep. Zainab, Hussein's sister, held the children close and whispered prayers. Rubab, Hussein's wife, clutched her infant son, Ali al-Asghar, knowing that by sunset tomorrow he might be gone. The men sharpened their swords, not with excitement, not with rage, with acceptance. They knew this was not a battle they would win, but it was a battle they had to fight, because some things are worth dying for, and this was one of them. As dawn approached, Hussein stood at the edge of the camp, staring at the horizon. The sky was still dark, but in the distance he could see torches, thousands of them, 30,000 soldiers waiting, ready, and behind him 72 men, thirsty, exhausted but unbroken. He turned to them and said, This is the day, prepare yourselves. Maqtal al-Hussein. The sun began to rise over the plains of Karbala. The heat returned. The sand glowed gold under the light. And destiny itself arrived, not with trumpets, not with proclamations, with silence, the kind of silence that comes before a storm, the kind of silence that history remembers. Or, on one side, an empire's army, on the other, a family and their faith, and in between, the greatest test humanity has ever witnessed. What would happen on the morning of the 10th of Muharram, when destiny itself arrived? At Karbala, would any of them survive? Would the world remember their names? And would the heavens themselves bear witness? The answer is coming. The sun rose over Karbala on the 10th of Muharram, but it felt like an eclipse. The light was there, but it brought no warmth, only exposure. Hussain ibn Ali stood before his companions. 72 men, faces weathered by the desert, lips cracked from thirst, eyes red from sleepless nights, but their resolve unshaken. Hussein looked at each of them one by one and said, This is your last chance. Leave now. I release you from your oath. My family and I will face this alone. You owe me nothing. Maqtal al-Hussein. The silence was deafening, and then, one by one, they spoke. Abbas ibn Ali, Hussein's half-brother, stepped forward first, tall, strong, the flag-bearer. He said, "Ya Hussein, why would I want to live after you? My arms are only strong because of you. My life has meaning. Because of you. If I must lose both my arms defending you, I will do it smiling." Accounts in Maqtal literature. He didn't know it yet, but those words would become prophecy. Zuhair ibn al-Qayn, a man who had once tried to avoid meeting Hussein on the road, stepped forward and said, "By Allah, I would rather be killed, then brought back to life, then killed again 1,000 times, than to see harm come to you or any child in this camp." Maqtal al-Hussein. Habib ibn Muzahir, 75 years old, a companion of the Prophet, stepped forward, leaning on his sword, and said, "I have lived long enough. I have prayed behind the Prophet. I have fought at Badr, and if I die today defending his grandson, I die complete." Ali al-Akbar, Hussein's 18-year-old son, so beautiful that people said he looked exactly like the Prophet, stepped forward and said, "Father, I did not come here to abandon you. I came here to show the world what it means to be your son." Traditional accounts. And one by one every man spoke, not with bravado, not with fury, with love, with certainty, with faith. They were not there to win a war. They were there to win eternity. Before the battle began in full, Hussein made one final plea, not for himself, for his infant son, Ali al-Asghar, 6 months old, barely able to lift his head. His lips were cracked and bleeding from 3 days without water. His tiny body was limp in his mother's arms. Rubab, Hussein's wife, handed the baby to him, tears streaming down her face, and said, "Ya Hussein, he's dying. Please, maybe they'll have mercy on a child." Hussein took his son, cradled him gently against his chest, and walked toward the army, slowly, deliberately. 30,000 soldiers watched in silence. Some were fathers, some had children this age, and every single one of them knew this was wrong. Hussein stopped a few meters from the front line. He held up his son, so small, so fragile, and called out, "O people, if you have a problem with me, I understand, but what has this child done to you? He has not rebelled. He has not fought. He has not even spoken yet. He is innocent. He is thirsty. Give him water, just a few drops. If not for his sake, then for the sake of his great-grandfather, the messenger of Allah." Maqtal al-Hussein. The wind stopped. The horses stood still. Even the earth seemed to hold its breath. For a moment, just a moment, it seemed like maybe someone would step forward. But then, a man named Hussain ibn Ali, a sniper in Yazid's army, raised his bow. He drew the string back, took aim, not at Hussein, at the baby, and fired. The arrow flew through the air and struck Ali al-Asghar in the throat. The baby's body jerked once. His tiny hands clutched at the arrow. Blood poured from his neck onto Hussein's hands, staining them red. And then silence. The child went limp. Hussein stood there, holding his dead son, blood dripping onto the sand. He looked down at the small, lifeless body in his arms, and then he looked up at the sky and whispered, "This is easy to bear, O Allah, because you are watching." Tarikh al-Tabari. Then he cupped his hands, filled them with his son's blood, and threw it toward the heavens, saying, "O Allah, let this blood be a testimony against them on the day of judgment." Maqtal al-Hussein. He walked back to the tent, alone, dug a small grave with his bare hands in the burning sand, and buried his son. No funeral, no witnesses, just a father and his grief. And that is when the battle truly began. The companions of Hussein did not charge together. They went out one by one, each man wanting to prove his loyalty, each man wanting his moment to testify. Habib ibn Muzahir went first, 75 years old. He fought like he was 20, took down soldier after soldier until a spear struck him from behind. He fell to his knees, smiled, and said, "I have won." Maqtal al-Hussein, because he knew death was the victory. Zuhair ibn al-Kain went next. The man who avoided Hussein on the road, but couldn't leave once he met him. He fought until his body was covered in wounds. And with his last breath, he turned toward Hussein and said, "I am coming to you, Ya Rasulallah." Wahb, a Christian, fought and died defending the grandson of a prophet he didn't even follow. His mother handed him a sword and said, "Go, defend him." And when he was struck down, according to narrations, Hussein prayed, "O Allah, make his mother pleased with him." And a voice from the unseen replied, "She is pleased, Ya Hussein." Maqtal al-Hussein. One by one they fell, each name a story, each death a testimony, until only one remained standing beside Hussein. Abbas ibn Ali, the moon of the Hashemites, the standard bearer, the brother who loved him most. Abbas saw the children in the tents dying of thirst. He couldn't bear it anymore. He grabbed a water skin, mounted his horse, and charged toward the Euphrates. He fought through thousands of soldiers, reached the water, filled the skin, but as he rode back, they ambushed him. They cut off his right arm. He held the water skin with his left. They cut off his left arm. He held it with his teeth, and then an arrow struck the water skin. The water spilled into the sand. Abbas fell from his horse, dying, and his last words were, "Ya Hussein, forgive me, I couldn't bring the water." Maqtal al-Hussein. Hussein ran to him, cradled his brother's head, and wept. "Now my back is broken." And then Hussein was alone. All 72 had fallen. The tents were surrounded. The women and children were screaming, and Hussain ibn Ali, wounded, thirsty, exhausted, stood in the center of the battlefield. But, unbroken, he raised his sword and called out, "Is there anyone who will help me for the sake of Allah?" Shitu Maqtal al-Hussein. Silence. He charged. One man against thousands. He fought with the strength of an army. The soldiers were terrified. Even wounded, they couldn't face him. So they shot arrows from a distance like cowards. One arrow struck his chest, another his shoulder, another his leg. He fell from his horse, landed on the sand, and tried to stand, but couldn't. The soldiers surrounded him, but no one would strike. They knew who he was, until one man, Shimr ibn Diljawshan, pushed through. Hussein looked up at him and said, "Tell my grandfather on the day of judgment why you did this." Maqtal al-Hussein. Shimr raised his sword and struck. The head of Hussain ibn Ali was severed from his body, and in that moment the sky darkened, not gradually, instantly. As if Allah had closed the heavens' eyes, the earth trembled. Stones split open. Blood appeared beneath them. Across the Muslim world, the sky turned red. Documented in Tarikh al-Tabari, Ibn Kathir, when the sword struck Hussein's neck, when his blessed head was severed from his body, when the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad fell onto the blood-soaked sands of Karbala, the universe rebelled. Not symbolically, literally. The sky darkened. Witnesses across the Islamic world, from Damascus to Basra, from Makkah to Khorasan, reported the same phenomenon. The sun vanished. Not an eclipse, not clouds, darkness, as if Allah had drawn a veil over the heavens in mourning. Documented in Tarikh al-Tabari, Ibn Kathir's al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, al-Khasais al-Kubra. In Kufa, the city that had invited Hussein and then betrayed him, people looked up and saw the sky turn blood red, not sunset, not dust storms, red, as if the heavens themselves were bleeding. In homes across the Muslim world, dust collected on shelves was found to be crimson. Water drawn from wells came out the color of blood. Stones, when lifted from the ground, revealed fresh blood beneath them. Multiple classical sources, including Ibn Sa'd's Tabaqat and others. The earth trembled. In some regions, earthquakes shook buildings. Animals refused to drink from the Euphrates River for days. Horses that had trampled Hussein's body went mad, screaming, bucking, refusing to be ridden. Even the earth rejected what had been done. This was not legend. This was not folklore. This was the universe's testimony, a testimony that would be recorded by historians, Muslim and non-Muslim alike, for centuries to come. Because when you kill the family of the Prophet, even creation mourns. There was a man in Damascus. His name was recorded as Abdul Rahman ibn Abi Layla. Years later, he would tell his students, "I was in the marketplace on the 10th of Muharram. It was midday. The sun should have been at its peak. But suddenly, the light began to fade. Not like evening, not like a storm was coming. It was as if someone was draining the light from the world. People stopped in the streets. They looked up. They were terrified. And then the sky turned red, deep red, like blood pouring from a wound. An old woman beside me fell to her knees and began to scream, 'They have killed him. They have killed the grandson of the Prophet.' We didn't know what she meant, but she knew. She knew before any messenger arrived. She knew because the sky told her. Accounts preserved in biographical and historical literature. Abdul Rahman said, 'That night I couldn't sleep. None of us could. We kept looking at the sky, waiting for it to return to normal, but it didn't, not for days. And when the news finally arrived that Hussain ibn Ali had been killed, we understood. The sun didn't die that day. The world did. And he was right. Because after Karbala, nothing was ever the same. After Hussein was martyred, his family was not granted mercy. The women, the children, the sick, they were chained like prisoners of war. Their veils were torn, their jewelry stolen, and they were paraded through the streets of Kufa, the city that had invited Hussein and then abandoned him. The people came out to watch. Some wept in shame, some threw stones, and some just stared, knowing they were complicit, knowing they had sent the letters, knowing they had broken their oaths. Among the captives was Zainab bint Ali, Hussein's sister, the daughter of Fatima radiallahu anha, the granddaughter of the Prophet, wounded, exhausted, grieving, but unbroken. When the caravan reached Damascus, they were brought before Yazid. He sat on his throne, drunk, smiling, surrounded by sycophants and courtiers, on a platter before him, the head of Hussain ibn Ali. Yazid took a stick and began to strike. Hussein's blessed lips, the lips that had been kissed by the Prophet, mocking him. He turned to Zainab and said, "Do you see what Allah has done to your brother? Do you see what rebellion brings?" Silence. The court held its breath. And then Zainab stood, chained, captive. But her voice shattered the throne. She said, "I saw nothing but beauty. My brother lived with honor and he died with honor. You sit on this throne today, O Yazid, but it will not last. Tomorrow, you will stand before Allah, and on that day, my brother will be the prosecutor and you will be the accused. Hussein's head may be on this platter, but his name will be on the lips of humanity until the end of time. And your name will be a curse." Recorded in Maqtal al-Hussein and historical accounts. Yazid's smile vanished. His courtiers looked away. The guards shifted uncomfortably. Because in that moment, everyone in the palace knew she had won. You can chain the body, you can kill the man, but you cannot kill the message, and Zainab, wounded, grieving, captive, had just delivered it to the heart of tyranny. 1400 years have passed since Karbala. Empires have risen and fallen, thrones have crumbled, borders have changed, but Karbala endures. Not as a memory, as a mirror. Because Karbala is not just about the past. It's about every moment. Every time you see injustice and stay silent, that's Karbala. Every time you compromise your principles for safety, that's Karbala. Every time you bow to a tyrant because it's easier than standing, that's Karbala. Hussein didn't fight to win a battle. He didn't fight for power. He didn't even fight to survive. He fought so that 400 years later, we would remember some things are worth dying for. Mahatma Gandhi, a non-Muslim, said, "I learnt from Hussein how to be wronged and be a winner. I learnt from Hussein how to attain victory while being oppressed." Charles Dickens wrote about Karbala with reverence. Edward Gibbon, the historian, called it one of the most tragic events in human history. Even those outside Islam recognize it. Because Karbala is not sectarian. Karbala is universal. It is the story of every whistleblower silenced, every innocent killed, every truth suppressed, every soul that refused to kneel. Karbala is the eternal battle between right and wrong, and Hussein's message is simple. Never trade your soul for this world. The Prophet Muhammad said, "Hussein is from me, and I am from Hussein." Sunan Ibn Majah 144. Read that carefully. Not just Hussein is from me, but I am from Hussein. As if to say, my message will live through him, my legacy will be carried by his sacrifice. And it was, because after Karbala, the Ummah woke up. People who had been silent began to speak. Tyrants who seemed invincible began to fall. And the name of Hussein became a cry for justice that echoes to this day. But here's the question that should haunt you. If you had been alive on the 10th of Muharram, 61 AH, if you had stood in Karbala, which side would you have been on? Would you have been with Hussein, standing with 72 against 30,000, knowing you would die, knowing you would lose, choosing honor over survival? Or would you have been in Kufa, the city that sent 18,000 letters begging him to come, and then turned their backs when it mattered, telling yourself, "It's not my fight. I have a family to protect"? What difference can one person make? Most people like to believe they would have stood with Hussein. But the truth is, most people were in Kufa. Kufa, the city of broken promises. Kufa, the city of cowards. So ask yourself, where are you today? When you see injustice in your community, do you speak or stay silent? When you see oppression in the world, do you stand or turn away? When your principles are tested, do you hold firm or compromise? Karbala is not just history. Karbala is a mirror. And if you look into it honestly, you'll see yourself. When Hussain ibn Ali was killed on the plains of Karbala, the sky wept blood, the earth trembled, the angels descended, and the universe itself testified. This was not just a man, this was a message carved into the soul of humanity. Stand for truth, even if you stand alone. Speak against tyranny, even if your voice shakes, and never ever surrender your soul. Hussein's body was trampled, his head was raised on a spear, his family was chained and paraded. But his message conquered the world. 1400 years later, we still say his name, we still weep for him, we still learn from him. And tyrants still fear him. Because Karbala proved something they can never erase. You can kill a man, but you cannot kill the truth. Ubi, when Hussein was killed, the sky wept blood. The question is, if you had stood in Karbala that day, on which side would you have been? Think about it, and may Allah make us among those who stand with truth, even when the entire world stands against us. Ameen. And never think of those who have been killed in the cause of Allah as dead. Rather, they are alive with their Lord, receiving provision. In memory of Hussain ibn Ali and the 72 martyrs of Karbala 10th Muharram 61 AH, their sacrifice will never be forgotten.